Have you ever wondered how Leslie's Lessons Learned originated? Have you ever wondered what the backstory is? Have you ever wondered the life behind the originator, the host, Leslie Montgomery? Well, today we're going to give you the backstory. So, are you ready? Sit back, relax, and let's go.
We going.
Well, good morning, good evening. It probably is afternoon in some parts of the world. Welcome to Leslie's Lessons Learned. And normally our host is the magnificent Leslie Montgomery, but I've taken over today. I've commandeered the platform. I'm the host today. My name is Wanda L. Floyd, and I am so happy that you are here. I want to welcome everyone here from all over the world, whether it's the United States or the UK or any part of the world. We're just so happy that you have decided to join us this morning. But before we get started, please make sure that you are liking this broadcast. So if you're on YouTube, we want you to like, subscribe, and share. And if you're on Facebook, make sure you're following the page. And please do us a favor this morning. Make sure you share this broadcast with somebody because we have a dynamic story that we are going to dive into today. But before we get started, we have to do what we normally do. I'm going to get my mirror out this morning. And what do I see in my mirror? When I look in the mirror today, I feel wonderful today. I feel vibrant. I feel fantastic. I feel amazing. But I don't feel like that all the time. So, for some of you who woke up this morning and maybe you had a hard time getting out of the bed, maybe you sat on the side of the bed and just because we had the holidays, you weren't quite as happy, you were a little melancholy, maybe you were a little lonely, but I want you to know that you still have so much more to do, and life is worth living. I want you today to get your mirror and look in your mirror and look at the beauty, the wonderful, magnificent person that Yahweh has created you to be. And so, with that, you look in that mirror and you say, I love me. And there are people waiting on you. So, life is definitely worth living. And the reason why is because a life without you is like a world without color. Can you say that with me? A life without me is like a world without color. Say it one more time till you get it on the inside. A life without me is like a world without color. Do you imagine or can you imagine what a world without color would be like? Stop and think about that just for a second. A world without color. It would be drab, it would be boring. Man, we probably wouldn't even want to come out of the house if everything was black and white. I don't know how old some of you are, but some of us remember those black and white TVs. And we had to sit there and imagine what that looked like, right? We watched the black and white TV for forever until finally our family got a color TV. And when we saw what that program really looked like in living color, it changed the whole essence of that program. So now I want you to understand that a life without you is like a world without color. And we need your unique color. All right. So, again, I want to say to everyone that's here, we're so happy that you're here. But I have the unique privilege this morning to have a guest on our show of Leslie's Lessons Learned, and that is none other than the phenomenal Leslie K. Montgomery. And we are here this morning because this is her life. and she has a story to tell. So, Miss Leslie, thank you so much for joining us. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
First, I want to say thank you so much for having me on Leslie's Lessons Learned. It's a privilege and an honor to be on the other side. My name is Leslie Montgomery, and you are tuned into LKM Kingdom Living. Leslie's Lessons were learned, and yeah, my desire is that everyone that tunes into Leslie's Lessons Learned would go away with a life changing tip, and that's who I am. I am a mother of two wonderful daughters. I have one wonderful son-in-law, and I have three wonderful grandchildren. One young man that just turned 6, and then I have two lovely granddaughters in Philly. So that's who I am, and thank you.
Well, we're so happy that you are giving us this opportunity. I am elated that I have the opportunity to interview you this morning because there is so much behind the woman that we see sitting here every Sunday morning and some days Thursday throughout the week that interviews everybody else. But you have a story to tell. And I think I know that it is worth hearing. And because this is a place where we learn lessons weekly, someone is going to come away after hearing just a brief snippet of your story, going to come away with some life lessons. I want to say good morning to Ashley and um, Adrian and Team Childs and Linda and um, every Alfreda and everyone else who has joined us that I can't see right now, but we are happy that you're here. So, Miss Leslie, this is your life.
I'm on the hot seat.
This is your life. You've
Yeah.
lived an extraordinary life. Um, some definite, impressionable events and things have happened that have shaped you into the woman that you are today, the mother, the grandmother, at one point, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a aunt. And I want to go back to the beginning. I want to go back to childhood. Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Well, my childhood started out pretty good. My mom, my dad. Well, let me go back before that because I didn't know. Let me start here. I didn't know I was adopted until I was 48 years old, and all the time, the man that my mom married adopted me, and I never knew that. And I remember one day coming home from school crying. And I said, the kids in school said, and I said kids, and we know they're children. Uh, I said I was adopted. And he pulls out my birth certificate. You know, his name is on there and everything. He's like, what does this birth certificate say? Never told me, that I was adopted. And he always defended that side. And he was my father. So I think that there was always a void in my life because I knew something within me knew that something wasn't right. So in the process of going through that, growing up, and wondering if um, I belonged, wondering, never feeling like I fit in, always felt like I was a half of something, not knowing that I was adopted or anything like that. So I went through life with that, and that alone is challenging. If you are adopted and there's something on the inside that tells you that something's not right, and you go through life with that struggle. So then the next thing was the struggle um, was that we grew up and my sisters and I, we're going to be on this month on the 19th telling our story, but I'm just going to tell this part right here. My oldest sister, which is Linda, that you greeted, she was always told that she was our aunt. We grew up as our aunt, and we were her nieces and nephews. And it wasn't until we were teenagers that we found out that we were sisters and brothers. Now, the interesting thing was, I used to always tell everybody, she's my sister. And she would say, no, we're not. But it was something inside of me that just knew she was my sister. And they would say, are y'all twins? I'd say, yes. And she'd say, no, we're not. you know. And I just always went by this instinct that was inside of me that we were more connected than we ever knew. So after we found out that we were sisters and brothers, her and I began to tell people. My grandparents were so upset that we were telling people that we were sisters and not aunts and nieces. And that was a whole process by itself. But just different things in my life that when I look back now had shaped me, to feel negative, or should I say, not having confidence in who I was because I didn't know who I really was. I still don't know who my father is today. He was a gangster in New York. They said he used to carry a shotgun around, and he was West Indian. But when you look up the name, his name, there's like a thousands of them out there with the same name. So that part has not been discovered yet. I would like to know, is he living? I'd
Yeah.
like to know that. I'd like to know if I have sisters and brothers other than the ones I know of.
Mhm.
I would like to know what after that season in his life, did he change? How did he end up? Did he end up prosperous? What I just want to know those type of things, not so much the why did you he probably didn't even know he was having me because my family was so secretive. So he
Now,
probably didn't even know. And the interesting thing was, I'm kind of jumping all around, but to tell this part of the story, once how I found out that I was adopted, my grandfather had passed away, and
well,
they
wait,
had,
let's not go there yet. Let's not go there yet. Slow down.
okay, okay,
Okay. So let's just park right here, because we will go there. Let's
okay.
park right here. Let's talk about these secrets. It seemed
Mm.
like the family had a lot of secrets. What was the reason for all of the family secrets? First, you're adopted. Uh, the siblings are siblings, but they're told that they're cousins and aunties. What was the root behind, or the deep hidden thing behind all the secrets?
Pride. They always wanted everything, especially my grandmother, wanted everything to look perfect. And in a perfect world, you don't have a daughter that has a child out of wedlock. And not only did they have a child out of wedlock, this is the second child. And in the process of that, my grandmother was always very, very, very private. They grew up that way. There was 12 of them. Um, the girls was always very private. Everything had to be just right in their life, in their circle. So a lot of it was pride, not letting anybody know that she um, that that happened. Um, One day we'll have Linda on to tell her part of that story, but they were very private people.
Okay.
So everything had to have a story behind what happened.
Okay. So they had to control the narrative of what was going on. And if it did not fit that perfect life that a family would have, they would change the narrative. Makes
Change
sense.
the narrative.
It makes sense. So now growing up, although you were adopted, but you didn't know that you were adopted.
Right.
So how was life? I know you felt. that there just was something that was not right. Now I didn't have that experience.
Mm,
You couldn't have told me I wasn't there, so because I was adopted as well, so
right.
it hits home for me as well. And but you always felt that there was something different. Were you treated any different?
No, I think it was the prophetic in me.
Okay. So nobody treated you any different
No,
than any of your
no.
siblings?
Mm-mm. They treated me like one of the daughters. Well, I was one of the daughters. My father, he never treated me different until we got grown and I started noticing some things. But as a young lady growing up, I can't say that he loved me like he loved his own because I was his own.
Okay.
In
What?
actuality, I was his firstborn.
Okay. Oh, cool.
You
Okay.
know,
What
I was.
about your mom? What was your relationship like with your mom?
My mom, we loved each other. My mom was, as we say, and we talk about it now when we have a call once a week that we do. And we kind of think she was bipolar. But one of the things that we realized with my mom was that she always wanted to be loved. My grandfather was a very harsh man, and he could cut you off in as quick as you could flip a dime. And he, I believe she disappointed them by having children out of wedlock. And with the disappointment, as she went through life and they didn't like the way she did things, it was very emotional for her. So we lived in an emotional life. You know, sometimes it was good. Sometimes she would walk away and leave us, not with leave us, but we would be with our dad, my dad, and we wouldn't know where she was maybe for a week or two. She just would go and leave. She would just walk away, and most times she's at one of the cousins in New York or something like that all the time. But we wouldn't know where she was. And I remember we used to go to this church. It wasn't our church. We grew up Methodist, but there was a church, apostolic church, and the apostle was Apostle Skinner. And when she would leave, I would tell my grandma, "Take me to that church," and I would stand in line for prayer, so to pray that my mom would come back, and then she would come back, and so we had an emotional childhood, ups and downs. When she was there, she was there. I remember her. I don't remember, might have been my eighth birthday or something like. She was a tailor, seamstress, a tailor, and she would make our clothes. She would make our hats because she also was a musician. She knew how to make hats. And for my birthday, oh, matter of fact, I got on the color we wore that day. We had on orange, and she made us both matching outfits. And it was the dress and the coat. And my birthday was in the spring, so we went to Radio City to see the Radio City dancers for my birthday. And we took one of the friends. So there were memorable times. There were times that she was good, and there was times that life got to her. So
Mhm.
she would get ghost on us, and I
Mhm.
would be so mad that we had to be with my father because the only thing he would feed us was grilled cheese and tomato soup. I hated tomato soup for years. But that was our relationship with her. And I'm going to stop, not go any further, and let you continue.
So with that memory of the orange matching outfits for your birthday and going to Radio City Music Hall to see the dancers, and I remember all of that. That's so amazing. What did that day feel like for you?
Oh, it was I was look, I was in heaven at that time. It was a great you know what? And my mother wasn't leaving us at that time yet. So, but it's a rememberable moment. I'll never forget it. Just the fact that we was walking down New York streets and we had on the same outfits, And I was just so happy. And we had a friend and we went to dinner after that. So that was a memorable moment for me. And I'll never forget it.
Was that often a memory that you thought of when
Oh,
she
still
was
do.
there and still do?
Still
Yeah.
do.
So I would say that was a life-changing moment for you.
Yeah.
A life-changing moment for you.
Hmm.
What was it like when she wasn't there? Because as children, we don't realize, and what I'm hearing is that um, there was probably disappointment
Oh, yeah.
for her because she didn't live up to the life
Mm.
that her parents had planned for her. And back then, because I've experienced it, I'm sure they were very vocal about disappointment.
My grandfather for sure.
Yeah, very disappointing in her and what's her choices. And so she's trying to balance all of this, disappointing her parents, and now she's raising children. And we didn't know about therapy and having someone to be there for us that can help us work these things out, right? And so her only way of coping, which was probably helpful for you guys, was her getting away sometimes. A lot of us, if we could,
Would do the same thing.
would get away if we could, but we didn't have that option to have somewhere to go. And so her ability to get away was what was keeping her for you guys when you did have her. And so while then it was hurtful and it was hard to understand, it was really maintaining her sanity, doing her best to maintain her sanity because she's dealing with all these things. And thinking about that now, how does it help you look at that now?
I've never held it against her. I always loved my mother, and I always wanted to help my mother. Um, so I never held it against her. I didn't understand it. I'm not saying I understand it because I didn't understand it. I couldn't understand why would she leave us, you know. And when I look at it now, it just it can, I won't say it does because it doesn't anymore, but it can break your heart to think that you have a mother that was looking for love all her life and never defined it. Never defined it. Yeah.
It's amazing. And love is all around you. You know, you have a husband, you have children, and still not being able to get the love that you're searching for. And so let's go into your teenage years. We talked about a little bit about adolescence. And what was the teenage years like for Leslie Montgomery?
Well, they weren't terrible in the beginning. They were all right. Me and my girlfriends, we used to, back then you didn't really go to the hairdresser, so we would always fix our own hair and have a little cutie, what you call them, curly uh, things coming up the side, and just uh, just enjoying each other's company. And we would go uh, to Boston. We went to Boston in the summertime a lot. And this one time we went and I asked my mother if I could stay. And I guess she talked to my father and they said I could stay. And then a few weeks later, my mother and my sisters are in Boston. She had left my father. For years, I had blamed myself for that, you know. But it was something she probably had planned all the time. But so we ended up living in Boston, and that's when the life changing experiences really started to happen for a teenage young lady. And trying to still help my mother working and as a teenager and coming home and she didn't, she wanted all my money. She was like, she wanted everything that I made, and I was like, I'm not giving you everything, just, so we had these little difficulties. And I remember when the social workers came and took the children out of the house. And they came and took the children. I really think she gave them away. The reason why I say them, she she just sat there, and the social worker looked me up and down and said, "You can go wherever you want to go," because I was at that age; they didn't have to take me. And that's when it really started to affect me as negatively, that I was not wanted. And I remember calling my aunt because everybody in the family had taken one of the siblings. There's six of us. I'll say five of us because Linda, my grandparents raised Linda. She lived as their child. So she lived with us in, I guess it might have been like her seventh grade for 1 year, but she, was always protected and provided for. Not that we wasn't provided for, I should say they protected her and they kept her close. And it was phenomenal for her. Her life has really turned out. Not that mine didn't, but she's doing good for herself and I'm happy for her. But when she did that and I called my aunt and I was like, she just said, I can go where I want to go. And my aunt was like, come on, you can come down here. So I went down there. And when I went down there, my aunt, her children just did what they wanted to do. And I just could never do that. So I called Linda and her husband David, and I asked them to come get me. They came and got me, and I moved back to Jersey. And then another shift started because now I got to work and provide for myself in a different way. So they allowed me to stay with them. And yeah, I began to work for the YMCA. I began to teach young children, 4 and 5 year olds, how to swim. I worked in the daycare as an assistant. And then I worked in the office after the preschool was over. So, and that's when I started. Well, we always traveled. My grandparents were travelers and
Mhm.
we always traveled. But then that's when I started traveling on my own. A lot of devastation, yes, in
Okay,
those years.
well, let's slow down again. You have given us so much. Listen, I want to welcome everybody who has joined us after we have started. I want to thank you for being here. We are traveling back down memory lane, um, hearing about the life of the host of Leslie's Lessons Learned. We're giving you some backstory about the woman who created a broadcast, a show that is changing lives weekly. And now you are getting the backstory of her life. And so I want to go back. You just dropped that on us like a bomb, like boom. Like one day the social workers showed up. What was going on that
Um,
that would cause the social workers to show up? And how old were all of the children that day for them to look at you and say, we don't care where you go?
the ages were maybe like, who was the youngest? Mark, maybe 3 to, let me see, Lester's right up under me. 3 to, at that time, 13, 14. Doing those, they might not have even, I don't even know if my sister Colleen was that old, but they were young. My mother had a lot of, like I said, we think she was bipolar, something like that. And she had a lot of trauma that she had never dealt with. And she was going to a counselor. Um, she spent time in the hospital trying to get better. And I believe that children, we're blessed to be here, but I don't think she enjoyed us. One of the things she said to my cousin, I was sitting there, and she was like, I hated the doctor when he told me I was having Leslie. And she was like, well, that's a nice thing to tell your daughter, you know. But she just dealt with so much trauma, so much. disappointment, rejection from men. And so that was kind of, without me telling all the story, that was kind of where she was with her own life. So I remember one time they had us come to the counselor, and uh, all the family. It was me and my siblings, my grandfather, my grandma. They came up from Jersey to the meeting, and we're sitting there. And all of a sudden, the counselor says to me and my grandfather, "You are the problems." My grandfather said, "Come on, let's go." We got up and walked out. And one of the issues was uh, I would beg her not to. She always had a different man. I was like, "Can you please not bring them home?" And she was like, "This is my house. Get out." She put me out. Then she would call my father. My father was in New York. He'd come up from New York, sit down, talk to me, tell me to come back home. It was just a cycle of things. And then he would go back to New York. And the last time he came, he was like, "What is really going on?" And I told him, and he said, "You don't never have to come back." But he didn't tell me to come live with him. But he told me I didn't ever have to come back to the house.
What
But
do you believe that's what he meant? Maybe, he didn't
not to
vocalize.
live.
Yeah, to come to you didn't have to come back. You could live
Right.
with him, right? And because
No,
that was going to be my question, who called the social workers? And then when they were dispersing children everywhere, where was your father in all of this? Why didn't he come get you?
because he had gotten ghost, and he wasn't there. And um, he said when he knew anything, everybody was already dispersed, which didn't make a difference, didn't make sense because they're your children, you get them. But he always had excuses for all that, why he didn't pay child support, or he did pay child support. But I remember when we were younger, and my mom had to write a letter to John F. Kennedy because he was in the military. He retired from the military, and told him that she was not getting any money. And John F. Kennedy responded back to her and got in touch with his commander. And after that, she started receiving money. But yeah, he did end up taking my brother, which is next to me. The funny thing is, the first three of us, his name is Linda, Leslie, and Lester. We all, so Lester did end up going to live with him, and yeah. So
Okay.
the reason why the social worker was involved, I believe, because of my mother's mental state, and I really believe she didn't want to. If before she was walking out, leaving us. Now this she couldn't do because it was just her.
Right.
So she was like,
You
and
think
so
she called them?
I think so. Yeah, I do believe that. Mhm.
Okay.
And my
So,
cousins, all of them went to one of my cousins' houses.
okay. And how old were you at the time when you went to live with,
My
at the
aunt,
time, your aunt?
uh, about I was between 15, 16. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're 15. You're living with your aunt, who is really your sister.
Oh no, 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 no. Oh, when Linda came, Linda was married, um, and they lived in Jersey.
Okay,
I was living with my aunt, which was my grandmother's sister.
okay, okay.
She had 10 children. They were grown, but some of them still lived in the house and all. And one thing that she loved me, but she didn't care what we did. And
Right.
that for some reason that I
And
just,
because you grew up in structure,
yeah.
right? So you grew up in structure, so you're not used to people just doing whatever they want to do. And
Right.
while that could be wonderful, and hey, I got freedom, that wasn't your makeup. That
Yeah.
wasn't what you were used to. So I can understand you saying, yeah, this is too much for me. They can do whatever. I'm not used to that. And so at that point, then you go and you live with Miss Linda and
I
her husband.
went, no, they came and got me. I ended up living with my grandparents. I didn't live
Okay.
with them. I
Okay.
lived with my grandparents. There was something you mentioned I wanted to, I don't remember what it was. I guess it'll come back. Something about the old, younger age. Uh, yeah, I don't remember. Okay.
It's okay. It'll come back. It'll come.
Mhm.
So now you are being a teenager, 15, 16, you're working, and now you're learning how to take care of yourself, which, most of us at 15, 16, we want to get jobs. You didn't have a choice. You're kind
Right.
of, I have to get a job. And so now your career begins at 15, 16. You are working and all of this. How did you do in school? How well did you do in school with having to balance work and everything that you've gone through from childhood up until this point?
I didn't. I would go and sit in the hall. They didn't even care. But before we go back, I want to go back a little because, when we lived in Jersey, I used to babysit. So, you made money for babysitting. When I got into Philadelphia, Boston, one of the things that happened was the temporary agencies like they have now. The big company in Boston was Polaroid, and I wanted to work at Polaroid, so I used this girl's ID and identity to get the job. Now the funny thing was, her name I'll never forget. It was Diane White, and they would be calling me on the floor, and I wouldn't be answering because I didn't know they was talking to me. And I stayed there until they wanted me to become full time because I was only at that time I was only like 14, something like that, and I worked there till um, I couldn't work there anymore. They wanted me to become full time, and I couldn't because of my age. So I just wanted to throw that in. Yeah, school was was not a priority. Oh, I can't even get the word out.
Prior,
Priority,
priority. Yeah.
priority for I would say anybody in the family when it came to me. Um, uh, the others went to college and went on and have done great things, but my life just was, and it could have been the way I looked at it. It didn't seem like my life was really a priority for anybody. Yeah, I think that my life was my own. My life
Like
was,
you kind of felt like you were just there.
yeah,
You were just there. You were surviving. Um,
right,
you were, nobody was taking special or paying special attention to you. And so, in a way, you were hoping that, I'm not doing well in school. Could somebody see that, I'm not doing well?
well, when I went to class, I did well.
You did well. Okay. That's why I was asking you how
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
do in school?
Hmm.
So, um, but you're almost in a way looking for love like your mom was.
Right,
Now you're in the position. So now what she was going through is now being passed down through you because now you're displaced. You're not with your mother, you're not with your father, and now you're feeling like I'm just here, I'm surviving. You're making it. And can I just commend you very quickly on your tenacity and drive at that age of wanting to work at this big company. Like there it was Polaroid, here it would have been like Clorox or
right.
Way or something like that. Or even
Detroit
Facebook,
GM,
right?
yeah,
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 like Facebook, IBM, and
right. Hmm.
finding a way at 14 to get hired at this company under another name. I just want you to know that that's amazing at 14. My mindset wasn't even like that at 14. So
Yeah,
I just want to commend you on your tenacity. And that tells us a lot about the drive that is in you naturally. We've talked about authenticity, and authentically, you are a person that's driven, whether you recognize that or not. If you want something, you go after it
right.
and you do it. And I think that is absolutely phenomenal. Although you might not have felt the love that you felt, that you should have felt, you still were able to make a life for yourself. You handled the cards that was dealt to you,
Mhm.
and you made it work.
So before you go any further, I need to say I knew my grandparents loved me. They loved all of us. And I don't want anybody to think that they didn't love us. They loved us. And then the shift of fighting for your life makes you begin to sometimes live a different way. So it wasn't that they didn't love me. Um, they had their way of showing love. My grandfather, we'll get to him as we go on.
Well, we can talk about it. We can
He
talk
was, my
about it.
grandfather came from a family of 12 and was 11 boys and one girl. And out of the 11 boys, I think two of them were nice men.
Okay.
The other ones, they were nice to people on the outside, not so much even to their wives. And the things that came out of their mouth was not pleasant. So you had to, kind of live through that and try to decipher through that. I know he loved us about the best he could, um, with being who he was and having, growing up the way they did. They grew up with a lot of trauma and things like that. And from what I can understand, my great grandmother had passed, but I heard she was a character herself. So him and his brothers were very vicious towards their wives. So the things that came out of his mouth were not always, like I said, pleasant. And he could put you down and drag you through the mud and take you on a trip next week. But I might be making it sound a little more harsher than it was. I don't know. But yeah, couldn't have been because when everybody was grown, nobody wanted to go visit him. So that's a telltale sign right there.
And also back then they had gone through a lot.
Differently.
You know, a different time, different era. They had gone through a lot. And it was really, we didn't see a lot of love and affection back then. Their love and affection was, we got this house, I'm providing for us, I'm keeping a roof over our heads, we have food, we have clothing. That's the most affection that we're going to get. And the men had hard times, expressing themselves. So we got some of the hardness of that, harsh, but like someone said, they did the best they could. But I love the fact that you said, when we were talking about um, feeling loved, that you knew without a shadow of a doubt that your grandparents loved you. And that's a wonderful feeling to have, because sometimes, whereas if we look at your mom, I don't believe she had that
Right.
to look at, right? She
Exactly.
didn't have something to balance it with. Whereas
Right.
you have this going on with your parents, but you knew you had your grandparents that loved you.
And she loved us the way
Yeah,
that she could.
yeah, she
You
did,
know,
but she
she
didn't
was
have
unhealthy,
that,
but
right?
she was searching for that, right?
Yeah, she was searching for that love, which is
Mm.
why we have the issues that she had. And she, like you said, did the best that she could. I don't believe we're going to be able to finish this interview in this one session. So we are probably going to have a part two.
Really?
So, you were saying that the others went to college, and what did you do? We know you got your own jobs. again, I'm amazed. You were working. You went to high school. You did well in high school. What happened after that? Tell us about high school and beyond.
High school, high school, I walked away from it. Um, I have gone to college. I have gone to Bible school. I have completed Bible school. I have completed some college. I've never, um, I still need to go back. But yeah, I always strive to um, to bring myself to a place to continually get education, to continually educate myself. And whatever was out there, I was doing it, going to get CPR classes, going whatever. I was always, and I always teased my daughter and my daughter Ashley and my sister Linda and say, y'all just career students. And they were like, well, every time we turn around, you in somebody's class taking something, you know. But yeah, I always try to educate myself because the traditional way of education, you know, because of me trying to help and support my mom and the family was not the same.
So here comes a hard question because we've all experienced it, and we've gone with you from childhood through a college and all of that. So you have many, I would say, things under your belt that you're able to do because whatever it is that you saw that you wanted to master, you were able to master it. How did you master your love life? What was that like?
I'm still trying to figure that out, girl.
Tell us about
Um,
your love life.
my love life, I've always involved myself with the wrong person, and it cost me dearly. Um, Trying because of that aspect of trying to figure out, am I really loved? It, love was something that if someone would say to me, I love you, I did not believe them. I did not believe them. And it was like, yeah, 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 you really don't. You're just saying that. And I'll tell you why a part of that was I used to see my family. They would come together. They'd be loving and hugging on each other. And as soon as they out of each other's way, they was backbiting and talk about each other. And it made me say, I'm not going to say I love you. I'm not hugging you. You know, I went through that thing that I just didn't believe because of what I seen that anybody could really love me, you know. And I think that it stems from, I even believed before when I was a baby up that it stems from that. So that was something that was very hard for me to accept, and finding someone to authentically to sincerely love me was hard to believe.
Okay. So, because of your perspective of love and what you have gone through experiencing love, you didn't believe you were lovable.
Right.
And so, you, like many of us, made the wrong choices, allowed the wrong type of men to be in our lives. And it affected your life. Share with us how one of those choices affected your life. You were married, correct?
I was married twice.
Yeah. Tell us about the marriages.
Well, we ain't got time for that.
Well, I said we would have a part two, so let's let's. Well, okay. So pick one.
We'll table that. How about we table that?
No, we gotta talk. These lessons to learn. We gotta learn now.
um,
We got lessons to learn. There are lives that
yeah.
are being affected and
Oh
changed.
yeah.
Let's pick one of those If
I'm gonna
I were
the
to pick
first
one,
one,
I would pick the
Ashley's
latter
father.
one.
That yeah. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I said if I were to pick one, I would probably pick the latter one. Um,
Oh,
but you pick.
yeah, I'm gonna pick the first one, which was Ashley's dad, and us when I met him. You probably heard it on. I don't. You heard the other day on the story, but when I met him, I was just all into Yahweh. Um, Everything was Yahweh in my life, and from the time I would enter my house, it was I felt because I lived upstairs. So when you come in the door and my place started and you walk up the steps, but as soon as I opened the door, I fell on my knees and I was in a place, in a space with Yahweh. And for those that don't know God, and I would spend my time with him. And I was just so in love with him that that was the only thing I was really focused on was spending time with him. And the experiences that I had with spending time with him was none to any other. I remember my first experience with him, and this is going back to my teenage years, being in church, and Ruach fell upon me, which is the Holy Spirit. And for hours, I was just in his presence. And I remember my cousin, because me and my cousin, we used to do pretty much a lot of stuff together. And she was like, she's faking, she's faking. And I wasn't faking, but I didn't know what it was. And I would come home and they were like, let's go out, let's do this. And I would say no. And the only thing I would do was sit in the window because I didn't know to open the Bible and spend time in the Word. Now, the interesting thing about that was that my grandfather and my grandfather was a minister, a deacon, a minister, and they had Bible study every single morning at 7 o'clock. And I would join them for Bible study. But that, well, come to think of it, that wasn't until after I came back to Jersey. So that didn't, I can understand why. And I would just sit and look out the window. And then one day it just went away because um, no one was there to tell me what to do. So in my later years, I met up with some Holy Ghost filled people, fire baptized, running for my life, and they took me underneath their wings and began to teach me how to spend that time. And as we talk about the prayer closet, sitting in the prayer closet for hours, just praying and seeking the face of, at that time, God, and moving forward, I always had a love for him. So in the process of it, Ashley's dad had just came back from college, and he saw me in church, and he told his mom he wanted to meet me. And his mom said, Leslie, because we had an afternoon service, she was like, my son want to meet you. And I said, well, who's your son? How your son see me? And she said, he just came back and he was in church this morning. He said he wanted to meet you. I said, okay. And that's how we began to uh, get to know each other. And I had called it off. He had asked me to marry him. I called it off. And then I decided that I was going to marry him because I didn't know if anybody else was going to come along that would be interested in me. So we got married, but we were never, I'm going to say, I guess, compatible. uh, we had a lot of differences when it came to things, and he was always like, if I say, you know what, the Lord said, the Lord ain't tell me, so he ain't told you. But he was not saved. He got saved after he met me, and everything I did, he had to do too. I was on the radio broadcast at the church, so he had to make a stick about that. They put him on the radio broadcast. Everything that I did, he had to do. Why did I call it off? Because I knew that I probably shouldn't have been marrying him. Uh, but then I said, well, I don't know if anybody else is going to come along. So I went ahead and married him. We didn't have a terrible marriage. We also went, Ashley, we also went to a counselor. The counselor said, you guys really need to work this out. There's nothing wrong with you two. So he took me to for me to pick out a ring that I wanted. And every ring I picked out, he's like, nope, that's too expensive. Nope, that's too expensive. so,
But you picking the ring you want.
so I was like, well, you pick the ring. And then he picked the ring that he wanted me to have. So yeah, that was a telltale sign right there.
So how did he propose? I'm with Ashley. How did he propose?
He just, well, he asked me to marry him.
Okay.
And I said, okay. I said yes. And then we went to pick out a ring. And every ring
I'm
I
with
picked up
Ashley
was
for
like,
the
no,
interview. She said, how long were you engaged before you called it off?
not long. Maybe a month.
Okay. And then how did you know,
But we were still seeing each other.
would you
So I
just
was
tell him you
like,
weren't ready to get married?
I
You
don't even know
wouldn't,
what I told him. I just said, no, we're not going to get married. I don't know what I told him.
but he
And
wasn't
it broke
giving up.
his heart. Hmm.
He wasn't giving up.
No, we were still, friends. And then I was like, after I thought about it, I was like, okay, we can get married, you know. And his grandmother was so mad at me because I broke her grandson's heart.
Oh,
She
oh,
was heated.
oh. So
But
what
it,
happened? What happened? You ended up divorced.
mhm.
What happened?
um, oh, infidelity.
Okay.
Infidelity on my part,
Oh, okay.
on my part.
Oh,
And it, he he seemed to be interested in everything else but me. And he was a fanatic when it came to sports. So even when he came in the house, it wasn't, he didn't speak to me first. The first thing he did was go tell the, no, your grandma always liked me. It wasn't her, it was your great grandma. And it was, and the reason why she didn't was because they loved me until I cut it off with him.
okay.
And she had a problem with that. Um, he was such a fanatic that the first thing the TV came on, he wouldn't even take off his coat, and I used to sit there and just look at him.
Oh,
So that that was a problem. Us in church was a problem. At that time, I was working for, and we're at the top of the hour. At that time, I was working
I'm
for.
doing this interview, ma'am. This is my show today.
I know
I need you to be the
you
interview.
need me to be quiet. Oh, sit down somewhere.
We are at the top of the hour.
But I'll finish this story. Um, oh, my supervisor, I was working at Bordentown Correctional Center in classification. And in classification is where we would come in and we would find out what happened, who was the inmate, what happened that night with the inmate. And part of my job was first thing when I came in was the type of all the disciplines that had to go out, and they had to go out to all the floors. So I worked in classification, and the supervisor was paying me some attention, a lot of attention.
A lot of potential. And so here we go again with this is why when Miss Leslie talks to you about being your authentic self, and when she takes that mirror and looks in that mirror and tells you to love yourself, love what you see in that mirror, this is why. Because the love first begins with us. And because there was from childhood, there was always this feeling of a lack of love. And then now in a marriage where you feel like you're unseen, you're not being paid attention to, once again, the love is lacking. Then when we see attention from somebody else, we're like, okay, well, shoot. I'm getting attention over here, so let's go on and
Let's
drift
go
over,
with it.
go on
Hmm.
over here. So I get it. I totally get it. And I want to commend you for sharing your story with us. And I appreciate knowing just some
Yes.
of the things that have shaped you into the wonderful woman you are today because you literally have learned lessons. And I'm so grateful for your life. I'm grateful that you never gave up, even feeling like you were not loved, appreciated, or even seen. You still made a life for yourself. And married twice, have beautiful children because of it, and grandchildren. And what you did not get, you instilled in your children.
Right.
So we so love and appreciate you today, Miss Leslie, for sharing your story with us. And I know it was we just got snippets, but even those snippets were life changing for everyone who listened because it makes us sit back and look at ourselves. It makes us sit back and examine our lives and how we view ourselves from this point going forward, or even looking in our lives, because I have some similar experiences. And what am I portraying today? And how am I affecting the people in my life? And how can I better affect the people that are in my life? And so you've done an amazing job. And rather, even growing up not feeling loved, you are loved by many today.
Yes.
All listen to me, you are loved by many all over the world. Not many people can say that. Your wisdom, your knowledge, what you bring to us each week is that it's changing lives. And we are blessed because you're here. We're blessed because your mother carried you. We're blessed because your grandparents raised you. We're blessed because everybody that poured into your life, whether good or bad, is why you are sitting here today. A life without you would definitely be a world without color. And
Mhm.
so I want to thank you for sharing your life with us. And if you have any parting words for us, please share them.
Yeah. You was talking about my mom having me. One of the things I understand that when I don't know what the conversation was that my grandfather had told her that I was here for some reason and that to leave me alone. So I don't know what that was, but I do want to say that that I started the adultery, but he ended it. He began to see somebody in the church, not out of the church, in the church. And even with that, and we were getting ready to, I don't know if it was the end of the year, we get preparing for the 30-day prayer, whatever. And they was like, look at your neighbor, one standing next to you, because that's going to be your prayer partner. And he looked at me and he said, no, you're not going to be my prayer partner. And he turned to her and said she was going to be his prayer partner. So there again, the rejection, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I want to let all those that know that your life is worth living and that there is a purpose. If you're looking in the mirror and saying, why am I here? If you're looking in the mirror and you're saying, nobody needs me, that was another thing. The enemy would try to get me to commit suicide. And I would say no, because I'm not going to be like my mother. She was always trying to commit suicide. And everybody used to always say, you look like your mother. You're just like your mother. And I used to say, I'm not going to be that part. That part I'm not going to be. And I remember times coming in from work and they'd be carrying out on a stretcher because one of the children had to call because she tried to kill herself because some man rejected her, you know. and just life experiences that she went through was so traumatic for her that it was sad. It was sad. So everybody has a story. Everybody did not have a fabulous life. There are some out there that say, well, I didn't go through anything. You are blessed, but you went through something. You better believe that, because everybody has to have a testimony. You don't have to have the testimony I have because of choices that I made and choices that was made for me, but you have a testimony. You have something that you've been through and that you might need to reflect on and see how it has helped you. Not so much the trauma of it, but how it has helped you to develop to be all that you was created to be. Uh-huh. So yeah, that would be my don't give up. You know, I was thinking about it today, and I don't want to say I want to say don't give up. I want to say keep going, keep going, and begin to look at life differently than you have in the past. So that would be my parting words.
Well, thank you so much. Again, thank you for sharing your life with us because you definitely have a story. Listen, please make sure that you have liked, subscribed, and shared. And if you are on Facebook, make sure you are following the page Leslie's Lessons Learned. We want to thank you so much for being here with us today and joining us as Miss Leslie K. Montgomery shared just a part of her life story with us that will most definitely impact many because she impacts lives every week. Please make sure you're here with us next Sunday, 9 a.m. As your host, Leslie K. Montgomery will be here with another Leslie's Lessons Learned, something that is going to change your life. Again, we love you, but we can't love you the way Yahweh loves you. Remember that. Enjoy your week. Have a wonderful day. And remember, a life without you is like a world without color. And we need your color. Ms. Leslie, thank you for allowing me to host your show for you. I give it back to you now.
Well, it's a privilege and an honor. Yahweh said to have you do it. You know, I was like, I don't know why. I don't know what that's about. And then he said December 1st. And here we are. Uh, thank you so much for uh, being willing, so gracious, and how you do things to do this. I appreciate it. Don't know when part two will come. Next week we have Apostle coming on. So, and I think the week after that we have Dr. Mathis with us again. But in the new year, well, somewhere along the line, we will finish with the great host of Minister Wanda L. Floyd. Have an amazing day every day, everybody.